My name is Sarah Hayes. I am 32 years old, and I still remember the sound of that $10 bill hitting the hardwood floor. That sound carried a weight much heavier than every promise my father, Robert, had ever broken. I stood before him that day with my college acceptance letter shaking in my hands, trying hard not to smile because I truly believed he would finally accept me. Instead, he just threw that $10 bill right at my feet, bluntly stating that it was all my foolish dream was ever going to be worth. My younger sister Chloe stood behind him smirking, coldly telling me I would never be on her level, which gave me the strength to pick up the cash and walk out of that house forever. I grew up in the incredibly wealthy, perfectly manicured neighborhoods of Greenwich, Connecticut, a picturesque American suburb where every single family was strictly expected to maintain a flawless, picture-perfect facade from the outside looking in. My father, Robert, was a deeply hard-nosed former high school football coach who had seamlessly transitioned into managing a high-end luxury car dealership, and he cared about absolutely nothing more in this world than rigid discipline, winning at all costs, and fiercely protecting the public reputation of our family name. My younger sister, Chloe, fit flawlessly into the exact mold of the perfect life he had always envisioned for his children, thriving as the loud, vibrant, center-of-attention captain of her high school cheerleading squad who naturally drew every single eye in the room. He would happily dedicate all his weekends to driving Chloe all across the state for her various high-stakes athletic competitions, proudly boasting about her endless achievements to anyone who would listen on his social media accounts, and treating her like she was already a bona fide, untouchable, local celebrity destined for greatness. Meanwhile, I was the deeply introverted child who spent all of my free time quietly obsessing over vibrant fabrics, hidden seams, and the gentle hum of a sewing machine. But whenever I timidly presented him with a beautiful new piece of clothing I had painstakingly sewn from scratch, my father would barely even glance up from his television before tearing me down with a bitterly harsh and completely dismissive insult about my wasted time and unrealistic fantasies. My mother was the incredibly graceful and quietly observant Evelyn May Parker, and she was genuinely the only person inside the suffocatingly cold walls of that massive house who truly understood, nurtured, and deeply appreciated my intense, burning passion for the intricate art of clothing design. She would always carve out special time to let me sit quietly right beside her while she carefully mended torn garments in our cramped little laundry room, and she would gently tell me in her softest voice that the right pair of skilled hands could patiently make absolutely anything beautiful once again. But then a devastating tragedy suddenly struck our perfectly manicured lives during my 8th grade year, when my sweet mother fell terribly ill and tragically passed away forever, brutally leaving behind a massive, echoing, and entirely unfillable void right in the very center of our shattered family structure. Immediately after the somber funeral, my grieving father desperately poured absolutely all of his remaining financial resources, attention, and affection directly into Chloe as a frantic way to escape his own overwhelming pain, effectively turning me into nothing more than a completely invisible, silent ghost haunting the empty hallways of my own childhood home. With nowhere else to turn for comfort in that incredibly lonely environment, I simply buried myself entirely in her worn-out, heavy metal sewing machine and carefully hoarded her leftover spools of vintage thread because the steady, rhythmic hum of that old machine was genuinely the only sound on earth that kept me from feeling completely and utterly abandoned by the world. By the time I finally entered the heavily structured halls of high school, my intense dedication to the world of fashion was no longer just a simple childhood hobby to pass the time, but rather it had truly become my one and only emotional lifeline, desperately allowing me to hold on to the precious, fading memory of my beloved late mother in a house that was constantly trying to forget her. Meanwhile, Chloe's incredibly loud, chaotic, and relentlessly demanding world was completely filled to the brim with elite private cheer coaches, glittering custom-made uniforms, and incredibly expensive out-of-state travel tournaments, all of which were lavishly funded without a single moment of hesitation by our eagerly supportive father, who blindly poured out his wallet to ensure she always maintained her flawless, star-studded image. In stark contrast, my own quiet little world had to be carefully hidden away in dark boxes beneath my bed and secretly contained within the worn pages of my hidden sketchbooks, forcing me to quietly work exhausting after-school shifts at a local retail clothing store, and secretly take on countless small alteration jobs from my classmates just to eagerly save up every single hard-earned penny for cheap fabric and basic thread. I quickly learned the devastatingly painful lesson that inside the cold walls of our deeply divided home, my quiet ambition and tireless hard work were never going to be viewed as an uplifting source of inspiration, but instead, they were constantly treated as a toxic, looming threat to the fragile ego and artificially inflated self-esteem of his golden, favorite child. During my highly stressful senior year of high school, I secretly poured my entire heart into building a portfolio and applied to the prestigious Parsons School of Design in New York City, and an absolute miracle actually happened when I received a coveted acceptance letter accompanied by a generous partial scholarship. However, when I finally gathered the courage to proudly show my father the official letter and practically begged him to help me cover the remaining tuition costs, he coldly and immediately flat-out refused, cruelly claiming that my attendance at a fancy design school would unfairly make my sister Chloe feel hopelessly inferior. When I desperately dared to invoke my late mother's sacred memory by respectfully insisting that she would have fiercely wanted me to go, he flew into an absolutely terrifying rage, violently throwing a crumpled $10 bill onto the hardwood floor and mercilessly kicking me straight out into the harsh, unforgiving winter night. With hot tears streaming down my face, I quickly packed my worn-out childhood suitcase along with my mother's precious vintage sewing kit and marched into the freezing darkness toward the bus stop, silently but fiercely vowing to myself that I would dedicate my entire life to proving exactly how wrong they were. Have you ever personally experienced the deep, agonizing heartbreak of having your biggest, most deeply held dreams completely dismissed or crushed by your own family members? And if so, please leave a comment down below to bravely share your own deeply personal story with our wonderfully supportive community today. I quickly moved in to sleep on the incredibly uncomfortable, worn-out old sofa in my Aunt Susan's tiny apartment located deep in the heart of Brooklyn, quickly discovering that this notoriously expensive, fiercely competitive, and relentlessly fast-paced New York City neighborhood absolutely never offered even the slightest bit of room, sympathy, or patience for any kind of personal weakness. Every single day, I was forced to wake up long before dawn just to catch the crowded subway for my early morning classes, only to immediately rush to exhausting retail shifts that lasted well into the late evening, and then I would purposefully stay awake through the entire night, meticulously designing and sewing beautiful new garments using nothing but the absolute cheapest, heavily discounted dead-stock fabrics I could possibly scrounge up. There were undeniably countless dark, lonely nights when I would quietly collapse and cry my eyes out on the cold tile floor of Aunt Susan's cramped little bathroom because I was suffering from such severe, bone-deep physical exhaustion, but catching a quick glimpse of that crumpled $10 bill, safely tucked away between the worn pages of my sketchbook, always managed to miraculously pull me right back up onto my feet to keep relentlessly pushing forward. Ultimately, this constant, agonizing lack of basic financial security beautifully sharpened and completely transformed my unique personal design style, fiercely driving me to focus all of my creative energy entirely on crafting highly versatile, incredibly functional, and truly affordable pieces of clothing that were intentionally constructed to perfectly fit, complement, and flatter absolutely every single type of beautiful woman's body. After graduating from design school and spending a few grueling years working tirelessly for other commercial brands, I bravely decided to gather every single penny of my hard-earned savings to officially launch my very own independent fashion label named Evelyn, purposely choosing that specific title as a beautiful, lasting tribute to deeply honor the cherished memory of my beloved late mother. In the very beginning, my entire corporate headquarters consisted of nothing more than a cheap folding table crammed tightly into the dusty corner of a crowded, shared artist studio, where I would personally spend countless hours painstakingly cutting every yard of fabric by hand, meticulously packaging customer orders, and filming engaging styling tutorial videos to carefully upload onto various online social media platforms. Late one evening, when I was feeling particularly exhausted and deeply emotional, I spontaneously decided to record and upload a highly personal video, openly sharing the painful, humiliating story of that bitterly cruel $10 bill from my past, never once expecting that this short, vulnerable clip would instantly go completely viral and profoundly touch the wounded hearts of millions of resilient women across the entire country. Almost overnight, a massive, overwhelming flood of new clothing orders aggressively poured into our tiny system like a raging waterfall, instantly forcing me to rapidly hire an incredibly dedicated production team to help keep up with the explosive growth of the Evelyn brand, which had miraculously blossomed into a nationwide success story, entirely built upon our unwavering commitment to genuine product quality and a deep, authentic sense of shared consumer empathy. Instead of opening my very first major flagship retail store in the incredibly busy, heavily saturated, and highly competitive commercial districts of bustling Manhattan, I boldly decided to secure an extremely expensive, highly coveted piece of prime real estate located right in the very heart of downtown Greenwich, to clearly mark my incredibly proud and deeply triumphant personal return to my hometown. The beautiful new storefront was meticulously designed to feel both luxurious and incredibly welcoming, featuring gorgeously warm oak hardwood floors, crisp white walls, and a small, deeply meaningful, and beautifully framed photograph of my sweet mother, Evelyn May Parker, which was placed with the utmost care right near the soft, elegant lighting of the customer fitting room. Hidden away in the strict privacy of my own personal back office, safely out of sight from the bustling sales floor, but always perfectly visible from my heavy wooden desk, I deliberately chose to mount that exact same crumpled $10 bill inside a simple, elegant glass frame, permanently hanging it on the wall, not as a bitter shrine to my past pain, but rather as a highly motivational, physical receipt, constantly reminding me of the agonizingly high price I had to pay for my ultimate independence and maturity. On the highly anticipated, invite-only evening of our exclusive grand opening celebration, hundreds of beautifully dressed VIP guests, eager local fashion journalists, and fiercely loyal early supporters joyfully gathered together to celebrate this monumental milestone, joyously clinking their champagne glasses and laughing together inside a stunningly beautiful space that was absolutely overflowing with brilliant, warm light and an overwhelming, undeniable sense of profound personal pride. Just moments before I was scheduled to step onto the stage for my official speech, my heart nearly stopped when I suddenly spotted my father and my younger sister Chloe confidently strolling through the front doors with smug, entitled smiles as if they were the true guests of honor at my event. My father immediately began mingling aggressively with the high-profile guests, loudly and proudly introducing himself to everyone in the room as the founder's father, while Chloe wandered through the displays, examining the expensive garments with a cold, calculating look, as if she were mentally cataloging her own personal property. The second I managed to pull them both away into a secluded corner of the back hallway, my father had the absolute nerve to shamelessly suggest that I should immediately hand Chloe a high-level position as my new regional sales director, casually claiming that since she was currently unemployed, our family should naturally stick together and help one another out. It became instantly and painfully clear to me that they hadn't actually shown up to offer me a sincere apology or to celebrate my hard-earned success, but instead, they had only come because they finally saw a brand that was generating massive amounts of money, and they desperately wanted to jump in and profit from the empire I had built with my own blood, sweat, and tears. I stood there in stunned silence as I realized that despite the passing of all those years, they still viewed me as nothing more than a convenient tool to be used for their own selfish gain, proving once and for all that their greed would always outweigh any shred of genuine family loyalty they might have had left. I calmly stepped onto the stage and offered my sincere thanks to my hardworking team and my late mother for their endless support. Then, I pulled out that framed $10 bill, revealing it to the shocked crowd while I spoke with total clarity. I shared the truth about that cold winter night, declaring that while I had found forgiveness, it did not grant them access to the empire I built alone. I looked Chloe in the eyes and told her she was welcome to apply for an entry-level sales position, just like any other stranger. They left in a storm of humiliation, while I finally freed myself from their shadow to launch the $10 future fund for aspiring students. Would you have offered them a job, or would you have sent them packing just like I did? Please share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more dramatic stories.